1 year ago, I was going into the new year, 2024, looking at starting dialysis. The reason being because my kidney function had fallen from about 22%, 20% to 10% at the end of last year. It was clear I needed to start dialysis, this new life of dialysis, in January 2024. So in this video, I'm going to go over the major things that's happened. Has it been an easy journey? Has it been a tough journey looking back over the last 12 months? And that's what I'm going to go through in this video. And I hope you find it very, very useful if you're going into dialysis. And it might give you some kind of idea of what to expect if you are making the move from normal life, as you know it, into kidney failure and then dialysis. In January 2024, I was given the option of starting hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis, starting that at home. At the time, it just seemed like natural to do the PD, start with the PD and try and maintain some kind of normal life at home. And I felt like the PD was kind of pushed on me a lot more than the hemodialysis. So what happened was I went in for the peritoneal dialysis. I went in and had the catheter insertion at the end of January 2024. Once I'd had the PD inserted, for me it was very, very painful. I don't remember I started using it straight away. I think it has to settle in a little bit. But basically, I got off to a bad start in January to March. The PD, I think it started okay. But there's a lot with PD you've got to get your head around, and there's risks of peritonitis. Peritonitis can be quite deadly, and also you've got to kind of maintain your bowels. It's very important to maintain your bowels while on PD, so everything remains kind of soft. The catheter stays in place because this PD catheter can move around. And it wasn't very long before I started using it. Then, there was some warnings that you kind of told, and big warning signs. If you get a cloudy bag, because you've got to drain the fluid in, put the fluid in, take the fluid out. And there's some warning signs you're told. If your bag comes out cloudy, and that's a very big sign of peritonitis. And that's when I started to notice there weren't as much fluid coming out as was going in, and that can cause a big problem with fluid overload. And then, not long since I've started peritoneal dialysis, I got a cloudy bag. I got an infected bag, and they say call the hospital straight away. When I noticed this, it was about 11:30 at night. It was really, I had a choice of putting it off to the day after before I informed the hospital, or letting them know, calling the Creedy ward at near midnight. And that's what I did. I wanted to be sure. And they basically told me I've got to come in straight away, take this bag with me. And it led to me having a few days in hospital, actually, and starting antibiotics, because clearly I had peritonitis, it was a very worrying time. And they also was investigating the bag, the fluid, and they confirmed it was peritonitis. Didn't start very well. It was really, really worrying. A few times I had to dash down to the hospital, which is an hour away, at no notice at all, because my own safety was at stake. So that incident kind of led me to stop PD, and I was left without dialysis for a little while, because they weren't confident in that working. There were a potential possibility of having the, kind of clearing the peritonitis, and then having the tube realigned inside. That would have meant another procedure, but I don't think anybody was confident that this would overall fix it. So we decided to stop PD, and then I say I was off dialysis for a while. It got to April, and I had some blood checks. I had some full blood counts, renal checks with my other hospital, and they called me back. They called me back and said, your urea is very, very high. You've got to do something about this. And my creatinine was very, very high. I think my urea was 35 at the time, which they say is very, very high. And my creatinine was over 700, I think it was, 700, which was also very, very high. I got told that I needed to start dialysis right now. It's important. I've got to start it again. So I informed my hospital who were dealing with the dialysis, and then I got quickly put in for moving forward with hemodialysis and having a, first of all, I needed a CVC line put in. So a CVC line so we can get the hemodialysis, moving on the same day. And I made a video on that if you look back at the playlist. So basically I go in, have the CVC line put in, it's in the chest and the neck. And then, I'm off and rolling into the hemodialysis ward. And that was my first hemodialysis session. And straight away, I felt a lot more at ease once that had started. And they started me on 3 hours, 3 days a week. So that's 12 hours at the start. And in May, they wanted to move me away, which is natural from using the CVC line all the time, because there's a high risk of infection there's a tube, a wire going to the heart, so it can get the blood. The tube goes quite deeply towards the heart, and there's a risk of infection. So naturally, they wanted to get me started with a fistula, which is kind of the common kind of method, but it's not something with the fistula you can just get the fistula put in and then start dialysis using it. You've got to, with a fistula, you've got to let it bed in, let it settle for a period of about 10 weeks, something like that. So it's kind of a long time. I had the fistula done. It wasn't really painful, but for the meantime, I had to keep using the CVC line, and I was using the CVC line for a long time. And at some point in May, I upped my dialysis to 3.5 hours, 3 times a week. So that is to provide a better clearance, by the way. A longer dialysis is a better clearance a lot of the time, and that's all what I needed was a 3.5 hour dialysis at that time. And then we get to July, and unfortunately, due to my anemia, my hemoglobin had started to drop. It dropped quite fast. I remember they started me off on a Rancep EPO medication to help with the anemia, and at some point they dropped it to 20 milligrams from 40, I believe, and that's when it started to drop quite rapidly. It was over 90, and I remember this 1 month it dropped from 90 to 70, which was a big warning sign. It kept dropping. It just kept dropping, and I started to feel really tired, and the being anemic really affected me. It actually fell down all the way to 58, which is very, very low with the anemia. I ended up in hospital. I was feeling really crap as well at that time, and I got an emergency call from a GP saying, look, your hemoglobin is 58. This is very, very low. And basically, it's when your hemoglobin is that low, your oxygen is not as easily passed through the body. There's not enough red blood cells, oxygenated blood through the bloodstream, and it started to make me feel really bad and panicky. But I stayed 2 days in hospital actually. They agreed to up the Rancep to 60 from 40, but they made it clear there's no quick fix. It's going to take a good amount of time for the hemoglobin to rise. And eventually the hemoglobin went to 100 milligrams, but it wasn't a quick fix. It took, before I started to see results of rising hemoglobin, it took a few months later, and it started to rise very, very slowly. But there were signs that, like, we do monthly blood tests, so it checked every month, and it was starting to rise very slowly at first, but it was lingering in the 60s, mid 60s, and it was a big worry for me, not having the rise in the hemoglobin. And what this enabled was I wasn't able to go onto the transplant list again. I'd got on the transplant list at the start when they were happy with everything and my hemoglobin was fine. But I got took off a few times, and to this day now, towards the end of the year, I'm still off the transplant list. But when I say my hemoglobin started to rise, it rose into the 70s and the 80s, and the last reading was in the 90s, which is great. It needs to be over 90 to put me on the transplant list. But they really want the hemoglobin to be 100 or more for the transplant list. So I'm still kind of waiting to achieve that. In November, the CBC line came out. They pulled it out, and I started to use my fistula full time. My fistula was a very good fistula. They were really happy with it, and that has been, they've always said it's going to be a fine fistula. So we're using that. I'm using that now, the fistula. It was December when it was hemoglobin came over 90. So as you can imagine, that were amazing. That were amazing for that to happen, and fingers crossed they can maintain that. And middle of December, you might have heard this flu going around, and it kind of, there was an outbreak at our unit. Middle of December, I got hit by this flu. Started off with a sore throat, headache, extreme weakness, cough, phlegm, all the ugly stuff. And of course, it was of concern for me because I'm immune compromised from a previous transplant. And I've just got to say, this flu, it really knocked me back, just in life and the build up to Christmas too. So the flu, it was just awful. I think I'm over it now, but I've got a bit of a cough still. So that really sums it up. As you can imagine, there's been a lot happen with the dialysis this year, and 2 or 3 infections where I was very, very worried about, being immune compromised. How do I think about dialysis since I started it? What do I think of dialysis? It's been a life changer for sure. It's been a life changer. I wouldn't wish a life on dialysis for people. It's been very, very hard. I guess some people may have started off with a smoother ride than I have. Or they may have had a worse ride than I have in the first 12 months. But for me, it definitely didn't go as smooth as I thought. It is full of ups and downs. I think that's the biggest thing to take from this this year of dialysis. It's ups and downs. You can be all right for a while. Things can be smooth, and then something will come into the mix, whether it's blood pressure, anemia, some infection, just something that you might not expect at the time it happens. It's just unpredictable, absolutely unpredictable. So it's definitely not a walk in the park, and also having hemodialysis 4 times a week, 4 hours a time. I am now on 4 hours a session, 3 times a week. So that's 12 hours a week of dialysis. I do twilight, so it's not the best at times. I have a lot of late finishes, getting home at 11 p.m. or something like that. And it's not just 12 hours. You've got traveling time. You've got over extra time when they've got to take all the tubes off as well, close up your dialysis. You've got to hold it for 10 minutes. It all adds up to extra hours in the week. So with traveling time and all the extra time in dialysis, sometimes waiting around, it can be probably 15 to 18 hours a week, which is quite a lot, you know. But having said all that, how do I feel from 1 year ago before I started dialysis? No question, I'm in a stronger position. I'm feeling better for having dialysis. And what dialysis is, in my case, it's just a temporary period of time to bridge me over until I get that transplant. And I'm in the transplant, and fingers crossed that goes well and gives me the freedom to travel again and live a full life. The hardest part is just not knowing how long I'm going to be in this stage of life, not knowing how long my freedom is going to be being like this, and I'm not going to be, how long my freedom is going to be restricted. That's the hardest part. That's the hardest part of not knowing, and it can get you down at times. Yeah, it gets you down at times. Especially, I felt quite down going to dialysis over Christmas, because I've had to go and do dialysis late at night, Christmas Eve, and it's going to be New Year's Eve as well. It just knocks you out of the spirit of Christmas a bit. And yeah, we are approaching New Year's Eve in a couple of days' time. So I've got to do my dialysis, not just on Tuesday, Sunday now. I need to go and do it today as well as Sunday, because they switched dialysis days too. And I can tell you, going in Sunday night, it's not fun at all when you're used to having it off. My normal days are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Anyway, so I hope you find this video informative and useful if you are heading into dialysis yourself, or you're worried about dialysis because you've been kidney failure. And I just think, I hope my insights to how it's gone with me has been useful to you. And I've also, because I'm with other dialysis patients, I've got to hear other stories of people on dialysis, and I'm still very, very early to it. There is a lot of patients out there who they've been on it several years, even 10 years or more. So, no doubt they've got their own story, and they've been through the ups and downs of it, just like I have. One thing for sure, dialysis is very much needed. You might think, oh, well, dialysis is 12 hours a week, 13, 14 hours a week. But without that dialysis, you're not able to get the other free time in life. You got 3 or 4 days of no dialysis, which you can do what you want. You can work, do what you want. And I say dialysis seems to get in the way, but without investing those hours into dialysis, you're not going to be able to have those 3 or 4 days of living a normal life. And why is that? That's because if you don't have dialysis, your body can't get rid of the water. And when the water builds up in your body, your mortality is pretty inevitable without dialysis. And stop dialysis, you'll feel crap for a while, and then unfortunately pass away. Or, like I say, just without dialysis, you won't get to live anymore. So it is a very important thing when your kidneys aren't working. A very important thing. You've got to put it first. As much as we don't like doing it, we don't like having needles in us, we don't like having our time taken away, We don't have like having our freedom restricted. It's the foundation to life when you need it. The foundation, it's just absolutely necessary. Anyway, all the best for 2025. And if you're going into dialysis or you're on dialysis, I wish you the best in your journey, and try not to worry too much about it and just take one thing at a time as it happens. And don't forget to enjoy life when you can. Always think forward. It's not forever. Dialysis doesn't have to be forever. If a transplant is an option for you, it doesn't have to be forever. So thanks for watching, and peace.